Services Marketing, MKT 625, Lecture number 41.
Assalamu alaikum Khawateen and Hazrat. This is Wasim Ahsan, your instructor for the course Services Marketing MKT 625 at the Virtual University of Pakistan. I welcome you to lecture number 41, which is going to be a continuation of the topic I covered in the previous lecture 40. The main focus of the topic was on the problem areas that come into the way of initiating an effective communication program. And those areas are overpromising, high expectations which build up to a point of being unrealistic, lack of education of our customers, because providers fail to educate customers about features of the services they sell, and a lack of integrated marketing communication program. The mother of all problems is overpromising, and we tend to overpromise due to the competitive pressures in the marketplace. And when I say we, what I mean is the total industry, meaning all the firms within one particular industry talk about things which they may not have the capability of delivering, and therefore overpromising. When we overpromise, there's a gap between what we have promised and what we have the capability to deliver. And that is something that we have to manage. So we can say that 4 areas need to be managed in order to come up with a program which is effective, realistic, and comes up to the expectations of our customers. Not only come up to the expectations of our customers, it is such that it keeps unrealistic expectations from taking place. That is the crux of the matter. So the 4 areas that we need to manage as the part of our strategies are promises, expectations, educating the customer, and coming up with an integrated marketing communication program. It is obvious that the problem areas have also to be the strategic areas that we need to address. And all the formulations that we may have to be centered on those problem areas. Let us talk about those one by one. Well, managing promises is all about coordinating efforts by external marketing and interactive marketing. I think we all know by now that there's got to be a complete match between external marketing communication and interactive marketing. Interactive marketing being the stage where the action takes place. The action has got to be totally congruent with the promises that we made. I will talk about this in detail in just a few moments. Managing expectations is all about telling our customers that they cannot get always what they want. And we do not tell them by just saying the way I have said in plain words. Rather, we tend to manage expectations of our customers in a way that they come up with a clear understanding of the limitations of their expectations. They must know what is it that they're going to get and what is it that they may not get. And again, I will say, in order for that to happen, that we have to be very realistic in making the promises. The third area is educating our customers, and that is all about telling our customers the features of the service that we sell, or the whole service process as it unfolds. This mostly takes place in B2B situations in which the businesses sell complex solutions to other businesses, and therefore there's a tremendous need on part of the seller to educate its customers about how the service is going to perform and what is going to be the criteria for evaluation of that particular service. So in other words, the seller has got to have a way of convincing the buyer about the competitive advantages that his service or services carry. The fourth area is about integrating the marketing communication programs, and that is about transmitting all information across all the functional boundaries of the organization, just in order to have those aligned with the expectations of our customers. Do not lose sight of the fact that those expectations have got to be the ones which are realistic. And realistic expectations will surface only if we do not overpromise. Now, let me talk about these strategies in a little detail. There are quite a few measures or strategic formulations that we can undertake in order to manage promises. First of all, we've got to make sure that our advertising program is very effective. And in order to make the program effective, we've got to understand the factor of intangibility of services in a little more detail. We know that services are intangible. We cannot see services, we cannot touch services, we cannot feel services, and therefore we've got to come up with a program which is very creative. And the fact is that coming up with a creative advertising campaign for services is more creative than creating a campaign for goods, for the simple reason of goods being tangible. And therefore, first of all, we have to overcome the factor of intangibility. And that is why I said we've got to understand intangibility has to be understood in a little more detail. All I can tell you is that the services have the different kinds of characters which all owe to the main characteristic of intangibility, and those are services are incorporeal, services are abstract. We always talk about services in generality. Services are non-searchable, and the services are difficult to understand. Let me explain all this with what I've said. Incorporeal means that services are not made of any physical matter, or they do not occupy physical space. However, the delivery mechanism does take place in a physical environment. And therefore, because of this character, services have got to be represented with the help of something physical, which could be equipment, which could be the physical evidence, and so on and so forth. The second character of intangibility, or the side of intangibility, is abstractness, which really means that services cannot be visualized because they're not an object. So what is it that we should do in order to come up with effective advertising when we deal with something abstract? Well, as a strategy, we can talk about the benefits of the service. If we show the benefits enjoyed by the customer as part of the copy of our advertising or the storyboard of the commercial on television, that we can amply clarify what the service is all about. For example, we can show someone enjoying the benefits of a text message or expressing the luxury of receiving a telephone call in one of the remote areas of the country, thereby expressing high satisfaction. Services, like I said, also are talked about in generality. Again, owing to the fact that services are not things, they're not objects. We always talk about services in terms like a wonderful service, a very good, satisfying experience, and a unique exposure, so on and so forth. So, in order to take care of this generality, we can come up with a set of strategies by showing documentation to substantiate the nature and the benefits of the service. Just like in case of the abstractness, we come up with expression of benefits of the service enjoyed, we can show the documentation that can support the features of the service. We can also show physical systems that back up the service because we have to overcome the factor of generality. We can also show some kind of the performance episode in order to substantiate the features of the service. So this is how we overcome the factors of services being incorporeal, or abstract, or the general, and we also can deal with the character of non-searchability in terms of services. Due to the fact that services cannot be previewed, especially those which are rich on experience and credence properties, you will recall, we cannot search them because they happen to be just performances. I'm not talking about hybrid services which can be seen because they do carry a tangible part with the service, although service happens to be the dominant side of the total package. But here I'm talking about those services which are rich on experience and credence properties, meaning you cannot evaluate certain services even after you have purchased those, or there are certain services which you can experience the moment you buy those, but then you've got to experience those before you get to know what the service is all about. There is just no way to preview those services. And again, we can take the support of some kind of documentation to substantiate the features of our service, and we can also show testimonials from satisfied customers. There are so many different advertising campaigns that carry this kind of a theme, and that must be flashing into your minds as I talk about that particular character of advertising. The other side of intangibility is that services carry mental impalpability, and this basically means that services are difficult to understand. They cause cognitive problems. They create dissonance. Knowing what cognitive dissonance is, we've got to do something to overcome this side of intangibility as well. And again, I would say that this happens because of the fact that there is no way of previewing the service or having a prior exposure to the service. So in particular, when somebody is buying a service for the first time, there could be quite a bit of mental impalpability that is inherent in that particular service. How do we overcome that? Well, we have to show the process step by step as part of our advertising. And we can also show an actual episode. And this is what many companies, hotels in particular, do. Because customers, while they buy the service, find out what they have seen in advertising or as part of the total communication campaign. Having understood different dimensions of intangibility, we should be all set to put together an advertising campaign which is effective for something that is intangible. Without the understanding of all those dimensions, there's just no way that we can put different pieces together to make our campaign an effective one. Researchers and practical experts strongly suggest that we use narratives to demonstrate service experience. And in essence, what this means is that we talk about stories, or we show stories instead of talking about features of the service or enlisting the features one by one as part of the advertising. Just think of the banking corporation that is showing the story of the money transfer from a foreign country to a remote location in our country is going to be a much more catchy account of the whole episode than talking about the features of that particular service. I think I should be clear what I'm talking about. I can give you another example of your own university, the virtual university narrating the success stories of its students' placement with good organizations will offer a more catchy account than just enlisting the attributes of virtual education service. This is what is meant by giving stories instead of just enlisting the features one by one. You may not still be able to explain what you're trying to say, However, if you talk about a story or you picturize a story, you can amply make the concept of the product and the attributes of the product clear in the minds of your customers. Another strategy which experts strongly suggest is that we use vivid information for our campaign. This basically calls for creating very distinct mental pictures in the minds of our customers and also evoking certain emotions just in order to develop an association with the service brand. There are so many different ways and means to do that, and it all depends on the extent of the creative imagination that we may have as the marketing managers or as advertising agents. One of the ways is to dramatize certain the socio-cultural customs. Another one could be arousing patriotic and nationalistic feelings, depending upon the timing and occasion. Yet another one could be showing features with the help of visuals strong enough to convincingly explain the features and benefits of the service. This is done, like I said, by creating a mental picture, because once you have created that kind of a picture or a visualization in the minds of customers, they develop certain emotional attachment with the service product. And if you succeed in doing so, that really pushes your customers toward buying the service. I can give you a few examples of this strategy, which is being very extensively used by mobile telephone companies in the country. Without naming different companies which are making real good use of this strategy, if you come to think of it, you will know what I'm talking about. Social customs highlighted through commercials, the patriotic feelings, and very strong visuals in terms of explaining different features of the service, in terms of pricing, in terms of connectivity, no distortions at all, and so on and so forth. So all those commercials, they must be flashing into your mind when I talk about those, and hopefully it will make the concept very clear in your mind what I really mean by vivid information. Incorporating information into the campaign in a way that it creates very strong and distinct impressions on the senses of our customers. And along with that, also evocation of certain emotions so that they can develop the required association. And with the help of example, I'm pretty confident you know what it really means. The next strategy toward making an advertising campaign effective is to show the tangibles. We show the tangibles because they create a very positive impact on the minds of our customers, and it brings in credibility to our service. And this is what I talked about at the very outset of the course in relation to tangibilizing the intangible. And we have 4 different strategies to tangibilize the intangible. By way of creating associations as the first strategy, we link the service with the product with a person or a bunch of persons, a place, or an object. As a second strategy, we use physical representation, which basically is highlighting the physical evidence by showing the sophisticated equipment that we have to support our systems, toward delivery mechanism, or the servicescape itself. The third strategy is to show the documentation, which is all about factual data and the information on our customers. The fourth strategy is creating visualization, which is all about creating those distinct mental pictures in the minds of our customers I was just talking about a few moments ago. Now, if you come to think of all these, you will realize the linkages and the relationships between all the concepts that I've talked about during today's lecture, starting with the intangible dimensions of the service product, to having kind of an effective advertising campaign which makes sense to our customers. And we are still going through that, and with the help of examples of the 4 strategies that we have at our disposal to tangibilize the intangible, let me give you examples very much in relation to your own university. Distance learning can be associated with the hard work of the founder, rector, or those governmental functionaries who have contributed toward elevating the university to the point that it is today. You also can develop associations with the grandeur of the campus, which is huge, sprawled out, or you can show some equipment in order to create associations. Let us not talk about physical representation. We can always show the sophisticated IT and telecommunication paraphernalia that support the very concept of distance learning, thereby rendering it a great sense of tangibility. Instead of talking about features the one by one, this is what distance learning is all about. We are first creating associations with a person or with persons or with an object, and then we are talking about rather showing physical representation by highlighting all the equipment that we have in place in order to tangibilize the virtual education service. That is something which gives the whole concept a tangible shape. We can show the documentation by way of highlighting the accreditation with the Higher Education Commission, and we can also talk about certain associations with other universities by way of highlighting again the documents in relation to those facts. How about visualization? Well, we can show some very strong testimonials from ex-students of the university who are well placed at good professional organizations, talking with a sense of pride and giving credit to their alma mater. This is how we create visuals. So if you really take a look at the combination of all these 4 factors, you really can talk volumes with the help of an orderly campaign that is embedded into these 4 areas. The next strategy that we may use to make our campaign effective is feature service employees in communication. You must have noticed employees of companies appearing in ads. That does a lot of good to the primary audience, which is your customers, and also to the secondary audience, which is the employees of the company. Since featuring employees in communication is something very formal and serious, companies take a very realistic view of what they can deliver on the promises made, which essentially means that they do not tend to overpromise. This kind of a communication wins company-wide support, and all the employees of the company work in unison toward the same objective and goal by making the delivery of the service as much deliverable as it is expected. A lot of credibility is brought into the delivery the mechanism, doing good to the company as well as to the customers. Another strategy is very parallel to the one I've just talked, and that is featuring the satisfied customers in the communication. It is a very popular way of seeking testimonials from satisfied customers and appearing in ads of service products. In the first place, no dissatisfied customer will appear in the ad and talk about something which is not deliverable, which essentially boils down to the fact that satisfied customers do talk about the good features of the service and hence convince other customers about buying that service, bringing a lot of sanity and positivity into the communication campaign. What happens is when they give referrals, other customers give those referrals to other customers, multiplying the impact of the communication campaign, bringing in more customers into the fold of the customer base of the company. This really spreads positive word of mouth. And if you recall the risk factor involved in the pre-purchase evaluation of any service, nothing can do better than having testimonials from satisfied customers who already have used the service to their satisfaction. So the word of mouth goes around and does a lot of good both to the company and the customers. Yet another strategy is to promise what really is possible. Now, this is all about not creating ads which are very attractive and which are meant to win awards. Ads are basically made to make a promise and then to be good at delivering the promise. As long as an ad carries a promise which is deliverable, the ad is effective. So for the sake of credibility and coming up to the expectations of our customers, it is imperative that we do not talk about those things which are not deliverable. There are a couple of more strategies to make our campaign effective, of which one is transformational advertising. This is the kind of an advertising which captures the whole consumption experience, which essentially means that we show the episode of performance, that we show a service scape and the service being performed there. Hotels generally get into transformational advertising because they can capture the real life, the visuals, when the service is being offered and consumed. And when consumers walk into those hotels, they, in most of the cases, find the service as they saw. So this could be an effective way of advertising. To make your advertising campaign more effective, you still have another option to go for a form of advertising which takes place online. And that is what you call banner advertising. You can place your banners on different websites in order to reach the target market. If you happen to be, for example, in the hospitality industry, you can post your banners on different sites which are closely related with hospitality, like airlines, travel agencies, so on and so forth. So the effort there is to have customers click through the banner to get onto the main website, which is your company's. And therefore, we can say that the utility and effectiveness of banner advertising depends on the frequency of click-through. How many people click through and land onto the main website, which is yours, is something which can be tracked. That is the one good side of the banner advertising. But that good side has revealed that over the years, the use of banner advertising has receded, meaning it has gone down because of the fact that there has been a banner clutter. Because so many companies have been advertising those banners on different websites that the customers seem to have lost interest in all the banners which appear every now and then here and there. And therefore, there has been a lot of thinking about what really could be done in order to revive the trend. And researchers have found out I would like to tell you to your benefit that size really matters. Because of the popularity of this advertising, the banners became expensive, they were in great demand, and there was a clutter, and as a result, the people lost interest, and now they have established that in order to revive the trend, they have to go for a bigger size. So in order for your customers to be enticed toward the banner and click through it to get to your website, you have to have a bigger banner, which of course costs more. So there's a lot of debate going on nowadays whether to go for banner advertising or not, but the consensus is that it is not something which should be discarded. It is something that the people should stick to, because even if the number of customers going through the banners is not very high, the time they spend on browsing the website is much greater than the time they give to a press ad or a television commercial. Just imagine somebody spending like 10 to 15 minutes on a website as against a 10-second or a 20-second television commercial. And then you also know that because of being captive audience in terms of television and press, customers can be very passive. When a television commercial appears to the dislike of a customer might walk out of the room or switch over the channel. Same is the case with a press ad. If you do not really seem to like the ad, you may skim through the pages and go to some other material as part of the newspaper. However, when you are going through a website of your selection, you are most probably bound to give a lot more time to that website to understand and appreciate what the service is all about. So, given this debate, all I can say is that the banner advertising is not something to be discarded. It certainly is something to be considered seriously if you think you happen to be in an industry where banner advertising will work. With this, our strategies of making advertising effective are complete. And to make sure that there is complete clarity of understanding of the concepts that I've talked so far, I would like to give you a quick summary. Basically, it is managing of promises which necessitates coming up with an effective advertising campaign for the reasons that I've been talking about during this lecture and also during the previous lecture. And those should be very clear to all of us. And in order for us to come up with an effective campaign, we need to understand in a little more detail different sides of intangibility. In other words, we have to dig further into the intangibility of services. And what we've learned is that the services could be very incorporeal. Services could be, or rather are, abstract. We talk about services in generality, and services are non-searchable, and services also carry mental impalpability, making it difficult for us to understand them because they do not exist as something physical, as something very concrete, and therefore the need to have this understanding of the dimensions I've just summarized. Once we have a clear understanding of these dimensions, we can go ahead with an advertising campaign, meaning that we really can bring together different pieces in an effective manner. And we can do that by coming up with stories instead of just enlisting attributes and features of the service. We can be very vivid in terms of creating very strong impressions onto the senses of our customers. We can create pictorials, visualizations, and we also can tangibilize the intangible, which is a very important strategy of making an advertising campaign. And the 4 areas in doing so are creating associations, showing the physical representation, showing documentation, and coming up with visualization. We can also feature service employees as the part of the communication campaign. We can feature satisfied customers. We have to talk about those promises which we can keep, and we should create the word of mouth, and the word of mouth is best created by having customers give testimonials, and that is what is meant by featuring customers in our communication campaigns. And we also can go for banner advertising. So much for making an advertising campaign effective. All the strategies that I've summarized are the ones that we have learned today. In order to manage promises, we are still in the realm of promises. This is what you have to keep in mind. The other the strategy in order to manage promises is coordinate external communication. And this basically is all about having a tremendous match between external marketing and interactive marketing, a factor which I talked in detail in the previous lecture. There are 2 important elements of this strategy. Number 1 is that the message that we give through external communication has got to be consistent every time and each time. The second element is a complete match between external and interactive marketing. And this is something that we know in detail by now. The fact is that effective interactive marketing is a reflection of an enabling environment which speaks very high of effective internal marketing. And when we have all 3 marketing areas, meaning external, interactive, and internal, working in sync with each other, we are a company that is not making promises which are undeliverable. We make promises and we keep those promises. We do not break those promises. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of brand image and brand equity is built through consumer experiences. And therefore, it is very important to have all these 3 areas of marketing to work in sync with each other if we really want to build up brand image and the brand equity. The next the strategy is to make realistic promises. Now, this is not to say that I'm going to repeat something. It sounds like the repetition of what we've learned so far, but here I'm going to talk about something from the perspective of the 5 dimensions of quality. And the functional dimensions of quality, meaning reliability, responsiveness, assurance, empathy, the physical evidence. We as the service providers must be fully aware of the past history of the company. This is something this strategy really underlines. And we've got to be very clear about the rate of successful deliveries and rate of unsuccessful deliveries. The meaning, the number of times that we have succeeded in delivering the service according to the expectations of our customers, and the number of times that we have not succeeded in delivering the service according to our customers' expectations. How can we find that out? Well, the most effective and reliable way of finding that out is through carrying out marketing research. You might as well recall ServQual. If you carry out marketing research with the help of ServQual method, the chances are you will not go wrong in determining what went wrong where and how many times it did. Thereby, getting a complete data of successful deliveries, unsuccessful deliveries, and your inability to come up to the customer's expectations on different dimensions. That is why I talked about dimensions of quality in relation to this particular strategy. Because if you have not performed you have failed on one of the dimensions. And one more thing what we have to keep in mind is that 4 dimensions, meaning responsiveness, assurance, empathy, and tangible evidence, are what you call process dimensions or delivery dimensions. Reliability is not part of the delivery or process dimensions because reliability is the result of those. To what extent you've been responsive, assuring, empathetic, also using physical evidence to your support, all depends on you. It is within your control, and that's something we already have learned in some other context. And therefore, companies must be fully knowledgeable of the fact as to what extent they are reliable. Knowing the level of reliability, companies should come up with a communication campaign, and that is what is meant by making realistic promises. So we have approached talking about deliverable promises from a different perspective, and that is the perspective of the functional quality dimensions. Service must reflect what is talked about in communications. That is the crux. Let us take a look at the remaining strategy, which is about guarantees. Experts think that by offering guarantees, companies can really make their communication campaign very effective because that brings in a lot of commitment into the process and on part of the company, because customers realize that the company is there to stand behind the promise it has made. And the importance of guarantees is known to us already. We should not be offering guarantees which cannot be called by customers. We have to offer those guarantees which could be called by customers in case of delivery failure. So while putting together the communication campaign, we should also keep in mind this factor of guarantees. And if we really can offer guarantees and then talk about those, it really helps us manage our promises in a better way. So this is all about managing promises, and that brings us to the next area, which is the managing expectations. You will recall that managing expectations is all about telling people, meaning customers, they cannot get all the time what they want. They may get it sometimes and they may not at times. Now the question is, how do we tell them? Like I said earlier, we just do not say in very plain words that we cannot come up to your expectations. No, we have to manage expectations in a way that we bring our customers to a point where they start looking into the limits of their expectations. That's the beauty of managing expectations. And the strategies that we have at our disposal start with offering choices to our customers. The concept of offering choices is all about making trade-off between time and money. You can be very transparent in communicating the choices to your customers by talking about quick time delivery at a high price and a delayed delivery at a lower price. So in other words, if there are customers which they are wanting delivery of a service very quickly, then you should charge a higher price. And likewise, if there are customers who are willing to accept a delayed delivery, then you should charge a lower price. If you talk about these choices very transparently, meaning about the price you charge in relation to the time frame of delivery of the service, then customers definitely will reset their expectations. If you do not talk with your customers at all about these choices, the chances are that you may not be able to manage their expectations. The second strategy that you may have at your disposal is the developing line extensions, or developing service products which offer different layers of benefits to customers. Just like manufacturers come up with a range of products within one category, offering different prices and the value to their customers, service providers must also do the same. If service providers they just keep their service standardized, then most probably customers are going to develop unrealistic expectations. So this again calls for creating benefits for different services and communicating those to the customers so that they know the limits of benefits attached with every product. And this can be really exemplified with the help of credit cards. You have a gold card, you have a platinum card, and you have something which is very regular. And you have different kinds of limits attached to those the tiers. You have yet another strategy at your disposal to manage expectations, and that is to communicate criteria and effectiveness of the service. According to this strategy, it is the responsibility of the seller to explain how effective the service is and also the criteria against which the buyer can assess the service. Buyers have to understand the competitive advantage which your service carries, and therefore it is your responsibility as seller. Just assume that you happen to be a software development house trying to sell a software package to a customer. It is your responsibility to talk about all the technical features of the service because customers will not know how to use that. And you also have to explain all the benefits attached with that. You give your customers a criteria whereby they can compare your service against all the competitive offerings. And you can give that criteria only if you explain all the features point by point. This is a strategy which is applicable mostly in B2B situations because it is a question of dealing with services which are sophisticated and could be complicated. I'm not talking about a standardized kind of a service which is there just for the taking if you happen to consume that, like a courier service, for example. I'm talking about something which could be tedious if not explained. And you as a supplier also stand to lose something if you did not really explain all those benefits attached with the service and the criteria involved for assessment to your customers, because they will not be convinced about the technical dimensions of quality of your service. So here it is not the question of the functional dimensions which I keep talking in so many different contexts. It basically is a question of customers getting convinced that the product you are selling falls on the technical merits which you have established for the service. With explaining the effectiveness of the service along with the assessment criteria given to the customer, providers really can manage expectations in a realistic manner. But then providers have got to be very realistic when they talk about the assessment criteria itself. There should be no exaggeration when they talk about all those factors. Otherwise, expectations will get out of control, meaning they will go beyond the realistic zone, and then it will become difficult for the providers to manage those. That's the crux of the strategies relating to managing expectations. That leaves us with two areas: improving customer education and the need to have an integrated marketing communication programs. I'll be talking about these two in the next lecture, but just to make sure that we fully understand what I've talked about today, it is the overpromising which is the root cause of all the problems. If we can contain ourselves toward overpromising, we can resolve these problems. But then the fact is that because of the competitive pressures, all of us have a tendency to talk about things which we cannot really deliver. So how to manage all those things and keep checks on ourselves so that we can manage all those problem areas which are created by overpromising. We get into effective advertising, and then we get into so many other strategies to manage promises. Once we have understood how to manage promises, we must understand how to manage expectations, because once we are in a position to manage promises, the chances are that expectations will fall in place. Nevertheless, there still is a need to manage expectations, and we do that by having certain strategies which make it necessary for us to talk about choices, options, different levels of pricing and values, and talking about effectiveness of service and assessment criteria, which must also be given to the customer to enable him or her to assess the service against competition. So this is all about these two areas that I've covered today, and the remaining in the next lecture. Thanks for the attendance.